leading financial institutions, including the international.
As economist Kaushik Basu, who is now Chief Economic.
英国的凯特王妃在7月22号顺利。
But countries with very different economic.
世界工厂的优势逐渐的减弱。
China is not a country of democracy, but democracy is a result of economical development, not the reason of it. I'm sure China will be more open and free over time, because that is what had happened in Britain and France, where newly rose middle-class people asked for rights and freedom from the king and finally altered the country structure at that time. At the same time, I'm not sure that when will India will catch up with China, 10 years, 20 years, or maybe 50 years? The two countries had the same starting point, but during the 30 years of time period, the differences is getting bigger and bigger. When a tiny portion of the populations, like rich people like you guys, are still proud of their achievement in the democracy, I wonder if the poor part of the populations in India are also happy about being poor. Again, country never got rich just because they have democracy. Not even those rich countries like Britain, France, and US. Look back to their history. They finished their accumulations by doing lots of dirty works. It is funny that now these developed countries are trying to prevent other developed countries from doing the same thing. In my perspective, this will only keep Indian people in a poor conditions, while the rich master in India enjoying the cheap labor at the same time. Meanwhile, normal Indian people are leading a poor life, or this sense is kind of fooled by the rich country and rich people in the country. Of saying of the pollutions, I would say the less developed parts of the China also had good environment. And I'm sure not all of the part of the India is in good shape in terms of the environment. Those polluted areas probably are more development. These are just facts. I'm not saying it is good, but if you would rather let your people being hungry, there is even a bigger wrong. With all that being said, democracy is good, but at the expenses of efficiency. Dictatorship is of course not ideal, even though China dictatorship is somehow optimized, but it is efficient. When a country has a large population below the poverty line, do we really want to give up the efficiency and keep those people poor for a longer time? So right now, what is happening in China and India? China economy is dropping down, and India economy is kind of like picking up. Why China currency is so weak right now? Because they purposely manipulate the currency to the undervalue of it, and how they do that is just flood the market. In addition, I think that there's a lot of things India need to change. In the past, actually India used to have a stronger economics than China, but after that, China went to the different way with India. They built more infrastructure like trains, buildings, roads, and many others of that. Secondly, let's compare their work populations, their labor force. So China definitely has much larger female working force than India. So when you look at the distribution between working females and working males, it's much closer about 50. Well, in India, it is important if you compare a lot of strong economics. You'll notice that everyone is able to working. Since the 70s and 80s of China really let female to work, it makes more Chinese female to become more educated. So their labor force will also become more educated. You have much larger portion of labor. So as both female and males are getting educated in China, they are getting in a strong skill set. So their labor force will be more skilled. Therefore, they should be producing a higher output of that. Okay, now I'm going to talk about India and China, about the populations. So in China, they used to control their own populations by using the one-child policy. While in India, they didn't control any population of it. This is why I feel like India is not going to surpass China in future. India has a lot of population now. It's kind of like keep growing. Their growth rate is keep increasing every year. In India, their poverty line is much more than China. You can see a huge difference between their urban area and their rural area. While in China, their income gap, like their rich people and poor people, is getting lesser and lesser. But in India, you can definitely see their capital, their Delhi, is kind of like much different with the village. Is that their government is the main factor to influence their own economy, because Mao Zedong has done a very good job for China.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is right now China pretty much whatever the government says, it just happens. There's there is no kind of
because China is a command economy, right?
yeah, they're communists, and just like very recently they went through their 5-year plan. And pretty much the government says we are doing this, and it's forced to happen. In a way, is that good for business? Not really, because if, let's say, China said, we are going to be, we're going to force everyone to be more green. Now, that's a good thing, and I don't think China's going to do that. But actually, ironically enough, China's pushing more towards nuclear power, so you will see them becoming more green, just because they're shifting their power from coal to nuclear. But unlike in China, India, they're a democratic state, so you can argue maybe they're corrupt, maybe not, but at the end of the day, they're democratic. So if there is something that the population doesn't like, then they get voted out, and there is going to be some of that friction. Whereas in China, if you say you don't like something, it doesn't matter. The government does whatever it is they want to do. Whether or not it's, positive for the population or negative for the population, that's what happens. So that's kind of the advantage that China has right now, is they just do whatever they want as a government, and they don't really follow human rights. And they know that they're in a position of economic power where when other countries tell them, hey, you need to, there are things that you should be doing right now. Maybe respecting human rights, maybe providing healthcare, maybe not polluting so badly. And they just tell everyone, yeah, too bad. We're China. We do what we want. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
All right. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks for your precious time.
Yeah, it's cool.